First of all, how do you know Marlena? I mean, I ask this to everybody because a lot of people on the podcast are I meet them through Marlena, and Marlena knows everybody, so it's kind of like a running theme. Like, how do you know Marlena?
Well, I've been working in the entertainment industry for so
Right.
long. Eh, when she first started in SAG, when she was first working at SAG, that's when I met her. Because I was working in film, and I think that the paths intersected, and it was instant, right? Like she said, "Mira," and I said, "Mira," and we became friends, just like that,
Yeah, I mean, she
like sisters.
right. She has a way of, and I like people like that. Where like let's get through all. I don't know you, you don't know me, but like, do we have to go through the weeks and months of like warming up to each other, or can't you just show me who you are and I'll show you who I am, and then we'll vibe? And she's like
Yeah.
that.
I
What's going on? What's going on?
that I wanted to silence a call and everything.
So obviously, you are the I guess nowadays, you've first of all, doing my due diligence. You've done everything. You've been everything. You're doing everything. You're like this. What do you call it? Jane of all trades. So it's kind of hard to know where to start with you, but I guess we'll start with the podcast because I was listening to the last two, Edgardo, and the one we started sharing now. You are so gracious to allow us to share your podcast on Enclave Magazine. The most recent one with Francis Negron Montaner, who I also had on my podcast, and then the Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez. I wrote a story for Reconstruction.
Right.
So there,
I
there's the two things there. The most recent one was great because you ask her, it's Father's Day, and you say, I love those stories, right? Like, tell me about your father, tell me about your mother. I like to know when people were kids, right? Because I feel like everything that happened to you in those first 10 years is pretty much what you're doing now, right? Like they say, philosophy is just answering Plato, right? And that's kind of our lives. You're just answering your childhood questions or whatever happened to you, and you start with that. So anybody listening should check that out. But yeah, no, we're talking about Notes from a Native Daughter. And I was reading
thank you.
that you started it because you saw a podcast challenge. You had the idea for the you had the title in your head. You liked it from Joan Didion. And so when you saw this podcast challenge, you're like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And then you did what, like 90 something straight weeks?
Yeah. It was pretty amazing. Well, when I started the podcast, it was a personal challenge, but it was also the podcast challenge itself.
Right.
Um, I had lost a husband. So it was a really sad time, right? And first year, was, talk about Joan Didion, the year of magical thinking. It was a
Right.
very strange time, trying to ground myself again, find purpose, right? Because I'd like to have purpose.
May I
And
ask how long you were married to him and all that? I mean, just to give us context. I mean, you
sure.
you, you use it. I just read View for Death, so I mean, I would like to talk to you about how autobiographical that was. You kind of just reading it. I'm actually very lucky that I haven't lost anybody very close to me in my life, and it kind of scares me now that I'm 35 because it's like I know they're all gonna pile up now, and I'm scared that I don't have the emotional practice or equipment, or I don't know if you ever do, right? But reading your book, you kind of I had my ex girlfriend's mother was dying of cancer, and so you kind of reading your book gives you that feel of being in the hospital room with somebody who knows they're dying, is fighting but knows they're dying, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like your head is in a cloud.
Yeah. So all these things converge, they sort of overlap. Um, in total, I spent 4.5 years with Dan Larson. That's his name. Um, we married, I guess, halfway through, and 6 months after we married, he was diagnosed with stage 4 uh, cancer,
What kind?
colon cancer,
Colon cancer.
colon cancer. And so it was very, everything happened really fast. And from the diagnosis till the day he passed, it was 11 months that led to, you know, to this experience of being in the hospital a lot, and caring for someone that was dying. And it was definitely a life changing experience. One of the evenings, I was so desperate that I recalled this incredible article, that, or actually a very serious piece that I had read on Jackie Collins, the, the romance author, English, um, in this wonderful literary magazine called Apology. And in the piece, she said, if you write every day for 365 days, on day 366, you're going to have a book. So you can begin editing. That was her process, right? She
And
was a
that's easier said
machine.
than done, right? It sounds simple, but to do it, that's what I'm talking about the podcast, that you did it for not 90 something weeks straight. I mean, it sounds simple, just one a week, once a week, once a week, but that's hard to do. Once you're in, in the teens, you start to realize, oh, this is hard to do.
Yeah. But it's all connected. That's why I'll go back, because it's all connected. So I this one particular evening that I was desperate, I was either going to collapse, or I was going to swim. And the grace of God, and perhaps my own inner strength, I said, I'm going to do what Jackie Collins did. I'm going to sit and I'm going to write every day. And that's what I did. But I wasn't thinking that I was going to have a book. I just was writing to get it out of me, all of all of the sorrow, all of the grief. And
To really make sense of it, I mean, I know as a writer, you write. People who aren't writers think that you go to the page knowing what you're already going to say and what's going to come out. But a
right.
writer doesn't. Writer goes to the page for kind of for a lot of self discovery, right?
Hmm.
Doesn't know what they're
Yeah,
gonna say, doesn't know what they're gonna feel, what they're gonna find out about themselves.
exactly. So it was that. It was really just, I needed to get it out of my chest. I didn't want to necessarily be talking about all those feelings with any one person, not because I didn't have people that I could trust, but more because I considered them, my immediate family. They were all going, his daughters, they were all going through pain. And I felt that this place was very private. Once he passed, and I returned to the United States, because the experience was in Denmark, in Copenhagen. I
And
I
yeah, how
began.
are you able to manage that? Because it comes out at the end of the book where I think in your afterword, where you're saying, I'm so grateful that we were in a country that has universal health care and treats healthcare as a human right. Because if you basically said if we were in America, we would have been screwed. Like you imply that,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Well, I don't imply it. I very purposefully, um, wrote about it, because when I was there, I I just felt it. I've had experiences of hospitalizations with people that I love in the United States, and the experience is just diametrically the opposite.
Right.
It's our system is cruel.
Yeah.
Our system does not.
Unhuman.
It's inhuman. It's inconsiderate. It's selfish.
You go to the
Um,
emergency room bleeding from the head, and the first thing they want to know is how are you gonna be able to pay for this? Whoa! How are you gonna be able to pay for this? And it's like, can you
um,
treat me first, and then we'll decide that.
yeah, among other things, and I felt really sad for the United States, and for any country really that doesn't offer that as just a fundamental right,
Right.
right? We all come to life. It's a miracle, right? The miracle of life. So how can we not, at minimum, offer this very basic uh, offer? Why can't a government just offer that? Because we are here by the grace of God,
Right.
and so universal health care is just it's just a major failure of our system, I think. And people that don't have money, that don't have resources, that don't have family members, don't have support, and there are millions of them out there. Um, it's a real savage way of dealing with humanity,
Yeah.
and it just breaks my heart. And it was it was so different in Copenhagen that I that's why I wrote about it at the end, because it just seemed so, just fundamentally incredibly sad, and we should be ashamed,
I
you
was
know.
listening to a lecture that or talk that the late Christopher Hitchens was giving, English American writer, obviously, and
Yeah,
uh,
I know he is.
he was talking about how he was saying that he thinks that there's not universal health care in the United States because there's something about American culture where like we're taught that life is supposed to be risky, and that's so true. But it's also like insensitive. You're saying it's very insensitive. Like yes, life is supposed to be risky, but like what happens if you luck out? Should you die? Should you just be thrown out? Our system seems to believe that, and other countries actually take care of their citizens. You know, they're citizens in that kind of liberal sense of like shareholders. Like we need to take care of these people, but in America, you're basically in a casino. Like win or lose, either you win, great, awesome, congratulations. But if you lose, you got to get the hell. You're out in the street,
Absolutely,
and it
absolutely.
changes the way we see each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing it now. What COVID-19 has unveiled. It's that the system is just glued with Scotch tape, and it's just, this is unsustainable.
Right.
And who are the communities that are getting the hardest hits? Black and brown communities, poor communities, uh, of any color, right? It's just
Yeah.
poor people are set up to lose in that sense.
Right.
And it's a terrible calamity. Um, it's a terrible calamity. I feel, I,
You can't feel bad
I,
enough about it. You can't feel
I
terrible
can't,
enough about
I
it.
can't, I can't. And, wherever I can, I raise my voice about it. And I wrote a book about it. And, you know, um, maybe now with all these new progressive elected officials.
I just saw you got a
And
new one in New York who's about to take out Angle, right? What's his name?
well, there's
Jamal
there's several people that won, and we're waiting
AOC in a landslide. Demolish what's her
for
face from
for the
CNBC.
for the new names. It doesn't even matter to waste our time talking about the ones that lost. What matters is that because of the occupant of the White House, it's just made it more apparent that we need to take care of each other.
Yeah.
And I think the youth is really aware of that. And I think many of us, and even in my generation, we owe our society and our fellow brothers and sisters consideration beyond money. Basic dignity is healthcare, is education, is obviously housing, and all of these things are just slowly just falling. We see them, the cracks are there.
Yeah.
And it's unsustainable, and in the long run, if this is not addressed, it's only going to affect and impact the country in ways that might see the very nation just collapse. That's how I see it.
Right.
And the stakes are that high right now. And I think many people are aware of that and are seeing that. So I'm really, I'm glad for that.
It's the whole. It's
Really
the
glad for
whole.
that.
The emperor has no clothes, right? I mean, we're seeing that, and I've seen it. I've read it, and I've heard it said, and people. I think people. Somebody said it on the podcast that if you're Puerto Rican, the government response to coronavirus does not surprise you. We knew that the federal government was either inept. They say this. Forgive an atheist, but they say this about God. Either he's all powerful and does nothing, or he can't do anything, so he can't help, so he's not all powerful, so he's not God. That's kind of like the federal government, right? Like they're either inept or they don't care. Either way, we're on our own. And Puerto Ricans know that. They knew that. You should have known that you should have known that 50 years ago. But maybe a lot of Puerto Ricans are waking up to that fact after the hurricane and now earthquake and everything like that. But in the
Yeah.
United States, yeah, we see that. Oh, the federal government isn't this monolith. It isn't this iron thing. It's actually very weak, and that causes fear, right? But I think, like I said in another episode, like the youth are, like you're saying, are culturally anarchists, right? Like they're like, don't tell me what to do. I'm gonna decide for myself how I'm gonna live, what I'm gonna think, how I'm gonna dress, and that's annoying, right? If you're older, but in this moment, we kind of need that energy and that thinking, like, oh, I'm gonna build the society. We're gonna build the society that we think is best for us, and there's room for that, because there are cracks in the system, huge cracks, gaps.
Yeah. Well, and to the credit of, younger generations and younger people, they're fresh.
Right.
They have, they're more ample. They're willing to
We're
test
talking
things
about
out.
burnout,
They
which is
want
another theme on this show. Burnout.
so all these things, are important, and we should listen, and many people are, and I'm listening to them, and I'm also listening, obviously, to very progressive, you know, uh, let's say, elders, or people that have come before me,
Right.
or you and I, or
Right.
in my same generation. But the youth they're contributors, and they live and they feel, and they are seeing people they love in pain, and so of course they have the energy to say, you know what, fuck this.
Yeah.
And good for them, and I'm glad, and I support them, and it's the way it should be, and it's a good moment, it's the right moment. I don't know if you've seen that meme that has gone around, that the COVID a shelter in place was kind of divine intervention, because everybody was so, we're all indoors. There are no activities going around. There's no concerts. There's no tours.
No distractions.
Everybody's in there, so no, very little distraction. So it's sort of honed in. It was like, wait, 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 wait. This cannot continue. This cannot continue.
And then there was this
So it's
communal
scary.
spirit of people helping locally. And then,
Exactly.
all of a sudden, George Floyd gets killed in front of everybody, right? In front of the whole world. And so you're dealing with a population that's, communal, and like the government's not here for us. We're on our own. Then you see that video. And let's be real, 40 million people have also been kicked out of a job. So they don't have anything to do. Again, I don't get what the system's end goal is. How are you going to push people and not expect this to rise up? It was ready. They were ready to rise up.
Exactly. They were ready. It was, unfortunately, through a really monstrous behavior, and a
Yeah.
lot of suffering that this administration has caused.
But what do you
Um,
do about the people who see
they
that
they kind
video?
of they've kind of they kind of did us a favor,
Yeah.
and I mean us, everybody that is just saying no more.
I mean,
Um,
you might get mad at me for saying this, but I'm one of those people who, I didn't like Hillary, and I kind of wanted Donald Trump to win, not because I agree with his policies, but because I knew America wouldn't wake up unless you couldn't slap America in the face, because it's been slapped in the face a bunch of times. You had to like punch it in the face, step on its foot, pull its hair, and that's what Donald Trump is, right? I think if I'm one of these people that I think if Hillary was in office, we wouldn't see an uprising. When Obama was up in office, it was harder for us to hate the system and call it racist because the president's black. I know that's a very simple way of thinking, but a lot of people think very simply. And so, now you have Donald Trump, and now it's easy to get angry at the system because he's president. I see you smiling, so I think you find that problematic.
No, I, oh my God, you froze.
Yeah. Oh, now you froze.
What happened?
I have no idea. It's never happened before.
You froze.
Yeah, weird. The other hardest. I mean, that's the other impressive thing about doing those 90 something in a row is like to technology, right? Like how many times I know you did the Edgardo interview was take two, right? Something there was some technical difficulties with the first one. I just recorded with a Colombian pianist, Carolina Calvache. Beautiful interview. Everything was
Yeah,
great. And then
she's amazing.
I go to edit it, and it just doesn't appear on my computer, and it deleted off of my stuff. And that's heartbreaking, right? Because one, you wasted the guest's time, right? You had a great conversation, but you feel like you wasted their time. And two, now there's like you can do it again, and I've done that, but it's there's in that first encounter, right? The things that come up, the ideas, the places where the conversation goes, they don't go that way anymore. You know, you already there's a familiarity, there's a worn rut to the conversation, and
Yeah.
it even happened with a close friend. You know, he came to Vegas, and we were shooting the shit in the car, and I'm like, man, this would be a great. He's telling me about gambling because he's a gambling addict, and you know he's getting me. I don't gamble, but the way he's describing, you know, the way he wins. I'm getting like emotional, like driving in the car. I'm like, this would be a great podcast, right? And so we go to record it in his hotel room, but that magic, you know, he felt it too. Like that the magic was not. It was a great conversation, but it wasn't the magic that we had in the car.
Hmm.
And that's that's terrible. But
Yeah.
so tell me, how does it? I mean, where does it start for you? You've done all, you know, you professional dancer, publicist, artist, producer, choreographer, TV host, documentary researcher, tour manager, music, theater, film publicist. You know, good lord,
Yeah.
where does it? How does
I
that
know.
start? How does that start? How do you get on that road?
Well, that's a good question. I feel I came to this world with a lot of cultural privilege. You know, I was born
Cultural
into,
privilege.
yeah, I was born into a family. My father is a musician, a singer, a beloved singer from Puerto Rico, and my mother is a artist philosopher who's also later like a cultural, you know, producer as well for morning shows, and then later worked in the cultural sector in Puerto Rico. So I grew up with a lot of artists, musicians, photographers, filmmakers, and obviously I was a dancer since I was 4, and I was one of these kids that took to dance. I was very serious about it, and that became, you know, a thread line in my life for 27 years. So that combination of dance and music really just opened me up, right? And my parents were very supportive because, of course, they themselves had chosen this road less travel. You know, I'm going to be an artist. And my father was very successful in many respects. So that gave me that cultural privilege that I'm talking about, right? Like access to iconic voices, you know, people that are beloved in the entire Latin American region and in the Latino enclaves here in the United States. And they've seen me grow up, many of these people. And I'm not just talking about vocalists, I'm talking about, you know, pianists
Right,
and saxophonists.
right.
So I grew up knowing what it is to be backstage and what it is to be on stage, not only as a dancer, but as a musician, as an actor. And that is just part of my life. I saw how campaigns are built for the music industry from when I was born, because that was happening in my house, you know, all the time, you know. And back then, campaigns, you know, the artist came to the house, they built the album cover, you would see the different phases, So everything, all these things were things that I just grew up seeing. It's just part of my DNA. When I finally moved to New York to study dance, um, on the side, I needed to also work. So my side jobs were production assistant, and I started, really young as the coffee girl, at Ralph Mercado Management. Um, um, a really good friend uh, took me on as an assistant. And she is a really prominent and successful publicist in the Latin entertainment industry. With her, I worked for many, many years, and obviously, and so as I was doing that, I was also still dancing, and at times I was acting, and at times I was doing research for documentaries, and so it was me gigging, trying to earn an honest living, but always in the cultural sector.
Right.
And little by little, as when I look back now, it's a very respectable body of work, very eclectic. Um, it's given me the ability to be like a swift macro thinker, which is really what I'm good at the end of the day. I can just think like immediately. You give me like some project and I know what's going to happen at this level,
You
right?
see all the moving parts right away.
I see all the moving parts like, really quickly. Um, and in the process of all these jobs, at one point, I went to, I got a master's degree in arts administration. I felt that it was like the most, the best fit for me at that time. This was after September 11th. It was because of September 11th that, I kind of sat back like many of us did and kind of like analyzed, what am I going to do in this new world? This is definitely a new era.
Kind of like what people are doing now, huh?
Exactly. I was against the war in Iraq. I was against all the bullshit that the Bush administration did. Um, and I felt that if I trained myself formally in some of these areas that I had, just grown up doing, that it would empower me. And it did, definitely did. And I went on, to do a lot of other things that and the degree always helps, and it was a great experience. I went to teachers college. They have an arts administration program at Columbia, and so
I
that
detected
was
a butt there. I detected a butt with the formal.
no, it
Oh,
just to say that I was it was I was one of the few Latinas or Puerto Ricans to be part of an arts admin program 20 years ago. And so I was like 1%,
yeah.
and somebody I think it was I was applying to something financial aid, and I said, this is where I'm going, and the person was like, do you realize that you're 1%? Like you're like one of the few Hispanic names that comes across here, and you're going to go to this college. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So that was like a really,
Well, it's
I
good to
felt
not
good.
think about that, right? It's good to not. Maybe if you were more conscious of that, you would have been more fearful of doing that. I think a lot
Perhaps.
of younger generation
Eh,
are very conscious of that, and it kind of
yeah.
holds them back in a lot of ways because they're like,
Well, I was very intimidated still,
mm,
when I had to take, my business classes in the Columbia Business School and law classes at the Columbia Law School. And I was very intimidated, especially for the business classes and the law classes. Because I thought I was totally like, stupid and dumb, and these people were brilliant. They passed the whatever exams they take, to get into law school. But these are lessons, that are very humbling and also empowering. And that once I was there, I actually did really good in my law classes, and I was surprised at how many. I don't want to sound, condescending, but
no, I know what you mean. Like we have this idea. I think as I'll speak as a
I put
Latino,
myself down. I put myself down.
right?
I was like as smart or smarter or more witty, or I was with it more than some of the people that had all these credentials,
But
and that
that's
was a
that's
lesson
that's
for
the whole
me.
effect of white male supremacy, right? Like we just believe white men are smarter and harder work, everything, right? We believe the lie, even though we know it's a lie. We believe it because we're taught it, right?
Yeah,
And then you go to a college and you're rubbing elbows with these people, and you're like, "Hey, I actually have more experience and intuition about this stuff," and you
yeah,
seem to be having trouble with it.
exactly.
They're just people. Who knew, right? Who knew white men were
Who
just
knew?
people?
Yeah. But it was more of a wake up call for me because of how much I had underestimated myself,
That's
right?
so important
And
too.
the value of all of the experience that I had, and that instinctual knowledge that I had for law, specifically entertainment law in this case, because I was in arts administration.
Yeah.
I I underestimated myself, and then I realized that I had to stop.
Which is
Not that
crazy. I mean, anybody listening to this, watching this, I mean, from your background, you would think like, oh, I know artists, I know intellectuals, I know blah blah blah. So you're gonna be completely confident in a college environment, and to hear that you weren't, um, I think there's people speaking for myself who came from a very poor background. I didn't know any artists, no any intellectuals, any professionals of any kind. You go and like you don't belong here. Essentially, fundamentally, you don't belong here, right? What you're made
yeah,
of isn't supposed to be here. Only certain people
yeah,
who are made of certain things are here. And so you kind of like stay in the shadows, right? I'm going to get my good grades and keep my head down, right? Try to
something like
survive.
that. Yeah, yeah.
But then when you find
But
out that you're powerful, then you attack it.
I was like, oh, this is what was I? It made me, it made me a little sad, but also because I see, I understood this that what I was experiencing, many other people experience, right?
Right.
That sense that, oh, I'm short, brown, maybe I don't, they're not gonna, I'm not gonna do so well. I don't know. I'm not gonna, but I was just as capable
Right.
as any of them, right?
So
And I did
Sotomayor
really
talks about it
good.
in her book, right, when she goes to
Yeah,
Princeton, where she's like,
exactly.
she's like, I knew that I was in here probably because of affirmative action. I'm from the Bronx. I'm from the projects. What do I, I don't belong at Princeton. She wasn't really a good writer, but then she realized, oh, her ability to learn and to work was as good as anybody else's, whatever color, whatever sex, gender.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so,
And
I mean, talk about. Um, you touched on just scrambling to make a living, to make a life and a living, which are two different things. In this arts realm, I mean, I think a lot of young people, myself included, are kind of still entering that and don't really realize how it's done. I think you can talk to that, like how you fall into wherever you get in, where you fit in, right? Talk about that.
yeah. Well, for me, I consider it a privilege, right? Because I had
Oh yeah.
that window of seeing artists that became successful. They didn't set out knowing that they were going to be successful. And when I mean successful, I mean that they were able to raise families, right?
Right.
Not necessarily that they're millionaires,
That's a great
not
definition.
necessarily,
That's a great definition, especially for an
you
artist.
know, that they were able to provide, which is what my father did, food on the table, school, we had clothes.
Right.
These things are huge,
Yeah.
right? For any artists, for any artist, whether you're a sax player, an actor, a dancer, a musician, a vocalist. So seeing that and seeing my father and his colleagues able to do that, see them going through a lot of difficulty and strife. And, one project was a success, another was not. There were times where there was a lot of work, there were times where there wasn't a lot of work, right? And these ups and downs didn't deter them, and I'm talking about both men and women, didn't stop them. No, this is the course. This is my track. And it's really their commitment to themselves, that they are doing this because they cannot do anything else. They
Yeah.
have to live by that, because being an artist, not everybody gets to be J Lo or Lady Gaga
Right.
or Madonna.
Right.
Those are very few people in this big, big panorama of artists. We have poets out there. We have theaters out there. We have musicians out there that are doing, that are educating other young people in the theater, in writing, in dance, in photography, in painting, right? So artists, I think from where I see, yeah, I've seen the artists that reach top echelon, but I see the artists that are successful in how they conduct, how they're true to themselves, and how they fight for that, and how they're able to somehow give a dignified life to themselves and to their families. And that is huge.
Yeah.
And
But that's what I mean. Like, there's people,
yeah,
especially now, the way our culture is now, the way kids are raised now, teenagers, and there's people who are like, oh, I want to be an artist, and what they mean is they want to be J Lo, they want to be Shakira, they want to be,
right.
and
And there's
they,
nothing wrong with that.
right,
It's just, to get there, there's no one way.
right.
Some of these people didn't never fathom that they would, their lives would be catapulted like they have, right?
Well, that's what I'm
It
saying. Like,
always
there's
catches you by surprise.
a lot of great artists. They started by saying, well, this is like, again, this is what I like to do, and two, I can't, like you said, I can't do anything else, right? Me personally, I have no other skills than two or three, and maybe just two. I
Yeah.
can't do anything else. I can't go to an office. I will get fired, right? Eventually. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, you have to. Yeah, it's great to aspire, right? As a writer, I want to be the next. I want
Of
to be the Puerto Rican
course.
Hemingway, or I want to be whatever. But you have to also realize, oh no, this is, even if nobody ever knows my name or sees my work, I am happy if I can, like you said, earn a living, be successful writer in that I can have the basics of life, basic material
Yeah.
of life.
Yeah. It's about commitment. It really is about commitment and understanding that, um, you love a craft and you respect the craft. And I have to say, I've met a lot of artists throughout my life. 90% of the time, if that commitment's there, if that respect is there are ways where and I've seen it happen, and I might include myself in a more broader sense. You commit to a certain type of life, and you will have that life, right?
Yeah, doors open that you didn't
Uh,
even see. You didn't even see the door there, but if you just stick
right.
to it,
Yeah.
yeah, I find like I keep telling my wife this, like, if you and this is very general, like if you just try to be a good person, and I'm not even talking about being an artist, right? But like it goes to that, right? If you're trying to be a good person, you try to make the best decisions every day, treat people right, and do right by yourself and other people. Things tend to work themselves out. You'll face hardship, right? But things tend to work themselves out. And I'm speaking from experience because I thought I shouldn't be here, right? I should be like a drug addict. I should be like a Bukowski living under some tunnel somewhere, And I was really prepared to live that life. And then I met my wife and just tried to help her and everything. And in me trying to help her, it helped me, Um, I don't know where I'm going with that, but like, uh, you're as an artist, you try to just do what you think is right. And people say this all the time, right? Don't do what you think is going to make money because you don't know what's going to make money. You don't know what's going to be a
Exactly.
success, right?
Exactly.
Your
And
favorite
that's
thing,
what
you might be
artists.
a failure. Your favorite piece of work might be a failure.
So when I say artists, we have people have a visual. Perhaps it's like some man in a canvas, a woman in a
Right,
canvas,
right,
But there are many ways of being an artist, an artist, and artists tend to be very versatile, and versatility really is really an asset to living life, because there are so many challenges to live life, that to be able to be versatile and see where opportunity is, or hey, I could do this project this way and I could maybe do this project that way, and all of these things matter. And I'm going to bring in why the humanities and arts are so important in any individual's becoming and development and growth, because when you read books, you learn, you see yourself, you reflect. It allows you time to find feelings that perhaps you didn't know what to do with, right? um, just because you're learning to play the violin doesn't mean you have to be a violinist, but learning the violin, learning the discipline of the violin,
Right.
being in contact with the violin will feed you, right? And so that's another thing, to go back to something we were talking about before. It's a calamity that art programs get cut from, some of the schools that need it the most. All children should be learning, should be painting, should be reading, should be taking photographs, should be running outside.
Right.
Sports is as vital. All of these things matter because they shape you into a fuller human being. They just feed you, And these things create versatility. They stretch you.
Yeah.
They don't keep you in one track. They stretch you to see different things in different ways. And it's really important to have that skill for life,
Right.
right?
No, I mean, I was just telling somebody that Baldwin would say, black parents should take their kids out of school because the schools are trying to sabotage black kids. And you can't help but see, like in the inner cities, if they're taking away art and they're taking away all these opportunities for in the city, it's mostly black and brown kids to be as expansive a soul as possible, right? And have all those tools and have those ways of approaching the world. I mean, you're setting them up for failure. You're setting them up to be not only failures professionally, but failures like have emotional problems, have problems maneuvering this really hard world where you need to have those
Yeah,
tools.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I see it too. I mean, I work in the field of education now. I work in the South Bronx at Ostos Community College,
Right.
and I see it every day. And community colleges in general are picking up the slack of an education system that has been, defunded
Right.
from the beginning, from
Right.
the elementary school, middle school, high school. These wonderful, beautiful young people, for the most part, come in. This whole notion of remedial education. Remedial is, yeah, we're trying to remedy what the government has failed to do,
Yeah.
what districts have failed to do.
Right.
They're not, because if your zip code is this and your zip code is that, you don't get more. It's sick.
It is sick.
And we come in, community colleges are picking up that slack and expected to deliver each year better and better with less resources and less resources and less resources. And to the credit, at least of my college, I got to say that they're doing it. The faculty's doing it. But it's struggle. It's struggle for them. It's struggle for the students. It's harder each year. And it's incredibly sad. And it breaks my heart, to see this happening day in, day out.
And
the
you
pandemic,
know what an education in not only the arts, but just an education, let's call it a liberal arts education, what that can do to somebody. And when you see that the system makes it so hard for somebody to get that, if they come from a certain zip code, you're like,
right.
Man, this is vindictive.
And
Hostos is, let's say, I mean, it's widely considered, right, the best community college in the state of New York, one of the best community colleges in the country.
I'm going to say that I don't have the proof data to say it's the best one, but it's definitely one of the best ones.
I might have done a little reading and read somewhere that they consider it the best community college in the state. Um,
It's one of the best ones, and I want to, I want to include the nation, right?
yeah.
Because there are hundreds of community colleges out there doing what Ostos is doing. We are, an incredible example of what it is to, be in the heart of one of the poorest communities in the entire nation,
Right.
and still deliver and make sure that brown and black and undocumented and documented and English as a second language learner people are getting out there, getting, empowered, getting educated. That is just a beautiful thing to see. Um, and it takes a village, it does.
I was gonna say that
Um,
it's. I know I've never been there, but I read that it was 60 something% Latino,
yeah.
um, and it is a it's a community college. It's on the Grand Concourse, right? You can't get more
Yes.
community than that in the Bronx than that, you
No,
know.
no. And Ostos is there because the community demanded it, It has a great, great story,
And the first
an
college in the United
undertold
States to
story.
be named after a Puerto Rican.
Exactly. And it was named by the first president, who was Dominican, Palestinian, a Palestinian man that his family immigrated. He was a doctor, and they immigrated to Dominican Republic, and then he came to live to New York to do medical work as a doctor, and he was invited to be, to become the president. And it was him that named the college Ostos Community College, because in Dominican Republic, Eugenio Maria de Hostos's educational system was placed in the educational system, and across from his house there was a park that was named after Eugenio Maria de Hostos. So when he came to to the South Bronx, to that to that corner on 149th, he said, this college needs to be Eugenio Maria de Hostos. And I think that Don Eugenio, who himself, was a fighter,
Right.
he wanted the liberation of all oppressed people across
He considered himself an
the
Antillian.
entire
An
region. Oh,
Antillian.
yeah. Well, there was Antillano, but also, like a freedom fighter,
Right.
a
Uh,
freedom fighter.
just to touch on the community college thing. You know, I went to DePaul. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I didn't know anything about it, and nobody told me anything about it. So I applied to 3 places: DePaul, Loyola, and UIC. And I said, I'm gonna go for whoever accepts me first. I'll go there because I don't know if I'm gonna
Hmm.
get accepted anywhere. And yet, long story short, I hated it at DePaul. Everybody was stuck up, and I just didn't like it there. And so I went to a community college, and I say this all the time. Like I went to Harper. Shout out to Harper. Um, the environment there was so great because something about a community college. My wife graduated from a community college. The people are the kids who go there. They're probably paying for themselves. Their parents aren't paying for them, so they're going there to learn. They're going there to get skills and know-how, and you feel it there more than you feel it. More than I felt it at DePaul. Right, I felt like DePaul was there was a lot of rich kids who were like it was just a rite of passage. I'll go to DePaul and I have my little laptop and my Starbucks and look at me, I'm a cute college student. But people go to community college, they're like, no, I need to come here, get knowledge, and build my life. And that
Hmm.
energy is so great for a college.
It is. It's exactly right. Community colleges are the underdog. They don't, in most of the media, they don't really pay attention to them.
Right.
As a director of communications, I can tell you that it's one of my grievances. You pitch, you pitch, you pitch, and it's like, doesn't matter. We don't care about your story,
It's not a sexy
really.
story. Yeah, community college
It's
isn't a
not
sexy
a.
story.
I don't know about if the word is sexy, but they are doing a service. And when I want to collectively, right? I can't speak for all of the community colleges, but I can pretty much sense that this is happening in most community colleges across the
Right.
country, where you know exactly what you said. Students that go there are putting their hard heart to earn that education because they know it's important, and they go through a lot.
A lot of them are working
And
part
it's
time. A lot of them have kids.
some of them are homeless, some of
Right.
them, I mean, all kinds of situations. And credit to the faculty and all the
Right.
thousands of faculty members that are working community colleges all across this nation, my hat's off to them, because
Yeah.
these are people, men and women, with PhDs
Right.
that are out there, master's degree, that are out there educating the most marginalized communities for the most part in our country. And I say now, I want to be inclusive because of what's happening right now, right?
Right.
It's happening in the Bronx, is also happening in many other places.
Yeah.
Your experience is exactly, like what I see uh, at Ostos, students that go in, and you know and sometimes they take 3, 4, 5 years to do it, but it's because there's so much going on in their life that maybe they can just manage one class a semester,
Yeah.
but they're doing it,
Yeah.
you know
And it's a shame
and
that somebody might look at that and it took me a while to go through college, and I'm not stupid. It's just that when I was lost and I had no guidance, right? I was just like a feather going through, and I don't regret it. I regret that. If you look at my college career, you think I'm stupid, but that's your problem. Um, you know,
I
I,
wouldn't say there's not an ounce of stupid in you.
I left college when I was ready. I like to say,
Right,
um,
well, that's good.
I wanted to talk to you about your book. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been obsessed with death, ages, years. I remember being a little kid, and like, oh, Michael Jackson had his first hit when he was 9 or 10, and I'm 8. So what is that? I constantly, my whole life, I do that, right? I'm constantly thinking about, and I'm not afraid of death, but it's been a thing. And so I wanted to find out after writing your book and going through your experience. I mean, and this is deep, but what insights about death? How did your view of death change? I mean, where do we go after we die? Stuff like that. Yeah, people wonder about every day.
Mm, yeah. Well, I don't know where we go, where we die. um I think I have, do I believe in reincarnation? Sometimes I don't know. But I do think we go probably somewhere very beautiful and lovely. That's what I think.
Right.
Um,
My
that's when
stepdaughter's
I'm,
animate about
what,
in reincarnation. Like if I kill a bee or something, she's like, that could have been my great grandmother or something coming to visit me. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
it could be.
Yeah,
It could be,
we don't know. We don't know.
So on my non-cynical days, I'll be like, absolutely reincarnation. We go to some other sphere. If you've been a good soul, you're gonna probably evolve to some other, alternate universe life where souls go. On my cynical days, then I'm like, yeah, you're going to hell. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a sinner. I'm going to back to Hades, like right down there, and like God knows. But it's a great mystery.
Yeah.
Eh, what I don't know is what I do know. Um, to answer something that you had asked before, um, I don't know that anybody's ready for when somebody you love dies. I think it always hurts. It will always hurt.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pressure because of society. People are really afraid to see people grieving.
Yeah.
Right? When somebody dies, people tend to jump and say, be strong. That person's in your heart. I hated that.
I was gonna say, what did you want
Right?
people to tell you? What did you want people? How did you want people to
Well,
approach you?
rather than, it's been a while now, so
Right.
definitely I can't say that, like any pain in life, time does make it better. Doesn't mean, when you lose someone you love, you will always love them, miss them, but it changes, right? It changes. It's you. I haven't lost a parent, thank God. But when I have that experience, I'm sure it's going to be the same thing. Intense at the beginning, and you slowly learn to adapt. It's like you learn to adapt to this absence, right?
Yeah.
Um, and those things are very, very personal and very different for everyone.
Right.
So for me, what I didn't I reject, when people would tell me, be strong. I would just go quiet. But what I did was really retreat. I tried to like not engage until I was pretty much ready to be out in the world, because I didn't want anybody telling me how to feel. I didn't want anybody to tell me, you gotta do this now and you gotta, no. Let me be how I wanna be, how I wanna feel, because this is my pain, my life, and I'm going to travel this road. I'm going to honor it how I want to honor it. So now when I
And that's the
know of
artist's
someone,
sensibility, right? Most people would who don't have that would try to get every books there are on grieving. Tell me how to feel. What should I think about this? But I feel
yeah.
like an
Well,
artist
grief.
goes into herself, right, and tries to figure it out for herself.
Well, no, I can only speak for myself,
Right.
because grieving
It's
is a
personal.
very personal thing. It might be that for somebody else,
True.
reading books
True.
helps. There are people that decide to go back to work soon after. My case, my experience, I was also tired because I had been traveling internationally, because it was a year of in and out of the hospital. It was physically very brutal. So everybody's different. What I do know, what I have learned, or what I do offer people that I love that lose a loved one at this moment, is I just offer them my love and my condolences. And I don't say, be strong. He's in your heart. Because what somebody did tell me one time, he's in your heart, and I said, no, he's not in my heart. He's dead. That, because we don't know where we're at,
Right.
and anything can trigger this incredible fear that we have of grieving.
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't that much of a coward facing it. I mean, there were days when, especially those first, those first 6-7 months were just terrible. It could be vicious, but again, it depends on the person. It depends on how people deal with confronting pain, and we're very afraid of it. We're very afraid to deal with that sort of pain. When we know we're not going to see somebody that we love ever again.
I'm just realizing talking to you that I mean, I said that I had never had anybody close to me die, but when I was in first or second grade, my best friend who was Korean, I was like, guess his younger sister, who was a year younger than us, was my girlfriend. And so I'm walking with the three of them home. This is in Chicago. We're walking home, and I kiss her. She goes. They live in an apartment, and I'm talking to my friend. Then he goes, and then I go to my house. Yada yada yada. Later, we're eating dinner at my apartment, and we're watching the news, and my friend's apartment building is on fire. Turns out that
Mm.
my girlfriend died, her mom died, and the baby died. And my they lived on the third floor, right on the main street, right on Ashland Avenue. So when they jumped from the mom had fallen asleep smoking a cigarette with the baby. The mattress caught on fire. She died. Baby died. My girlfriend died. The dad and my friend, they jumped from the window. They broke their legs, but they survived. And my whole school, this is back in the day, so this is elementary, middle school, so it goes from K to 8th grade. We had a field trip the day of the funeral, which was at a Catholic church a couple blocks from my school. Big Catholic, old Polish Catholic church, cathedral. And I remember one of my earliest memories is the baby coffin, the little white baby coffin coming down the center aisle of the church, and my whole school there. But I didn't cry. I don't remember crying or feeling any type of way about it. It was just something that happened. And now, I mean, and the other thing I wanted to say about that is now me and my wife, we don't, there's two things we tell each other instead of "I love you." We say you don't love me. You don't love me. You don't really love me. We'll kiss and we'll say, "You don't really love me. You don't mean that." Or we say, we'll grab each other and say, "Don't die. Don't die. Don't die." And we're young, but we're already thinking about, we talk about it all the time. I've been married since 2012, and I've known her since 2009. It's hitting us like, holy shit, if I lose you, if you die, if something were to happen to you, and I don't know when it's going to happen. That's the other thing. I don't know when it's going to happen. She might die later today, God forbid, but I just don't know that. I just don't know that, and she doesn't know that. And sometimes, when we're smoking or whatever and we're thinking about stuff, that scares the shit out of us,
It's scary. Yeah.
and the other day I caught myself thinking, like, watching all these anti-protesters, anti-Black Lives Matter protesters, all these racist people. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in an afterlife. But I remember thinking, like, I hope there's a hell. Isn't that weird? I'm not revengeful. I'm not vindictive. But I was like, I'm trying to be a good person. So, like, and there's a lot of people who are trying to be good people. Like, don't tell me that we all go to the same place. Like, because what's the point of that? That's fucked up. Like, you can't go where I'm going if you're a racist piece of shit. That I don't want to go where you're going. And I was
Right.
thinking, like,
Those
maybe
are
heaven has different levels, different rooms or something.
those are your cynical days,
Right,
right?
right.
We're allowed to have them. That's totally fine. But yeah, death is scary. It's obviously scary, for those that are left behind, right?
Right.
It's also really hard to, from what I saw, and as I wrote in the book, I suppose that you've if life has it that you have to have a slow death, it's very hard also to leave. You see the struggle of the being leaving, right? Because we love, because we're attached. And I don't just mean from cancer. It could be Alzheimer's. It could be any illness that puts you in a slow process of letting go of this world. It's a very painful thing for the person that's going through it as well.
Yeah. I mean,
and these are the things that that test you, you're right, and they give you character. I mean, as
right.
the way I dealt with the experience, I was very vulnerable, very tender. I kind of just allowed myself to be who I needed to be, and luckily, and I'm really thankful for this, I have wonderful friends, and I had places where they caught me, that I could just, when I came back to the States, I went on a road trip on the East Coast, and I went to see my friends in New Hampshire, and then I went to Vermont, and I was able to do some of this that was very privileged. Other people don't have that privilege, right?
Right.
And that's why I say every experience is different. What is not different and is equal to everyone, no matter perhaps how you handle it, is what you feel inside.
Yeah.
And that intensity, right? Whether you show it or you don't show it, it's you. It's very personal.
Yeah.
I was able to share it. I wanted to put it out there because I know that there are people that might feel alone. And it was a gesture, and it helped me also to kind of let it go.
Yeah, my best friend's dad, right after high school, his dad died of cancer, and everybody was grieving in their family except him. He's a hard ass, he's up in his head all the time, and he didn't cry. Nobody saw him cry, and I remember his siblings, his brother and sister, would come to me like, he hasn't cried, he hasn't shown any emotion, and we were worried for him. But looking back now, I realize exactly what you're saying. Like, grief is super personal. I guess we'll end on a final question. Like, do you think art then is a shot at immortality? Is it a shot to touch the infinite? Is it tied? I mean, is art tied to death? Is the artist's mentality,
Aww.
sensibility, thinking about death and after we're here?
That's so beautiful. I've never been asked that. I mean, I guess I've had conversations about it. That's a really good question. I think that's like a whole, evening of wine.
Yeah.
I think, sure. I mean, in many ways, right? That's why we love, now we don't have James Baldwin.
Right.
But
he's still alive. He lives.
He's still alive, right? He's with us. And now more than ever, right?
Right.
He's, for me, Zora Neale Hurston is amazing. Right. She's here. Oh my God, Maya Angelou, right? Like,
these are
here,
people who
right?
are dead, who are closer to me than anybody. And a lot of people
here,
who are alive.
Yeah. Or, so works of art are very special, and they do transcend. And I think art saves lives,
Yeah, for sure.
and
Saved my
I
life.
would always stand for that. So I think, in essence, to answer your question, I would say, yeah, I think it's life and death. It's, it's here and eternal. It's what comes out from us, from within us, and we give out with, our sense of purity and our sense of wanting to do and offer something for humanity and
Right.
society. That's the stuff.
But also
That's
to
the
say, I
stuff
was
we live
here. I
for.
was here. This is who I was. This is what I thought. This is what I felt.
Yeah, but it's also, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Socrates talks about like how people are always trying to be immortal. So the average thing to do is to have kids, right? Because if you have kids, you'll be remembered at least for another generation, maybe two. Your grandkids will talk about you, but maybe your grandkids are not. Your great grandkids are not going to talk about you. But then artists, right? You can die, but your book lives on, and there you
Or
are.
the
You can open it up
photographs, or the
or
photographs,
photographs.
right? We don't think, but photographers. Look what photographers they've gifted, hundreds of years,
Yeah,
especially the ones that were doing it from the beginning,
yeah,
That's a gift. That's beautiful. Even if we don't know who they are,
right.
them by name.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was exactly as deep and
Thank
as
you.
we kind of communed, and I kind of was expecting that. And I was again, I came to this conversation really intimidated because you are a Jane of all trades and you know everything, and you're
I
very
don't know everything,
well. Yeah,
but
nobody
I'm a
knows
Jane of
everything,
all
right?
trades for sure.
Yeah. Let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, they can find me at notesfromanativedaughter.com, nfand.com. I speak with artists and educators, really like people that are from the Pan American experience, although I'm going to be incorporating people from the Asian Pan American experience as well, because I feel like La Quinta Raza, all of these, the mix of races is we're one people,
Yeah.
we're one blood, and we
Right.
have so much to talk about. And I'm really interested in what inspires people to move forward, to create. That just thrills me. I'm never tired of listening to that.
Yeah. Is that one of the reasons
So
you started the podcast? You just like
yeah,
listening to people's stories, right?
yeah, exactly. Which is why I love Frances's Valor y Cambio, the project, right? And
Right.
the storytelling economy and things
Right.
like this. And what you're doing, and your piece that you wrote, a few weeks back, that was like stamped. That was like right on the money,
Which
what you
piece?
said. And it was about Black Lives Matter and everything that's going on in
Yeah.
Puerto Rico, and how it's all intertwined.
Yeah.
And because this is a scary moment, but I think it's fantastical and amazing that
It's a
that
great opportunity.
we're coming. Yeah.
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 Well, thank you so much. Guys, you can obviously check her again. I would tell you to head over to Notes from a Native Daughter. We'll be sharing her weekly podcasts on Enclave Magazine. Soldanela Rivera on Twitter and all that stuff. Good stuff.
Soldanela Rivera on Instagram. That's what I do. I don't do Twitter.
Yeah, good for you.
Um,
It's toxic.
and Soldanela.com is my website.
Right.
And nfand.com.
Thank you so much. It was good talking to you. Good to finally meet you, at least, digitally.
Thank you, Hector.
Take care.
Stay safe.
You too, and healthy and happy and all that good stuff.